Over the course of the last year, I've played through the entire Punctuation section of Steam on my absurd mission to play every Steam game in alphabetical order. That's a total of 51 games. If you've been following my journey, you'll know that there have been highs and there have been some bottom of the barrel lows. So I wanted to ring in the end of the year by taking a look at the best and the worst of the games I've played. But first, a couple of notes. There are 2 games that haven't featured as reviews yet, so these will be excluded from the list. There are also games that haven't been reviewed as they were released after I passed where they're listed in the Steam store. And lastly, there will only be 1 entry on the list per developer. With that out of the way, let's dive in and take a look at the games that made 2023 memorable, starting with the 5 worst games. In 5th place, Cute Snake 2. For a Snake clone and a sequel to Cute Snake 1, I wasn't expecting much, and yet I was still disappointed. Generic music, janky and unresponsive controls, and massive game-breaking bugs. Yeah, we're off to a great start with this list. It's all downhill from here. There's a standard game mode with added pop-up spam as each piece of food eaten gives you an achievement. In the custom levels, you can't progress past level 16 as the map has been coded wrong, with a wall of death 1 tile too far down from the top. And the devs forgot how to count, missing level 8 completely and hoping no one would notice. You can play a better version of Snake by literally typing "play Snake" into Google, and it's free. In 4th place, .G. This is an extremely simplistic bullet hell game. Control a spaceship and avoid getting hit by the ever-increasing number of flashing orbs. Some menu options don't work, and the game is permanently in a tiny window on screen. The sound effects are bare bones and there's no music, but there are increasingly difficult mechanics and you get achievements for surviving through them. That said, you can also get those achievements by dying and then just leaving the game running, as the devs apparently forgot that a timer should stop when the player is dead. The game avoided ranking higher on this list simply because it serves some small niche purpose as a bullet hell trainer. Just not a very good one. In 3rd place, LabRPGUp. I'm not sure why this game thinks it's an RPG, considering that there are no role-playing mechanics in the entire game. But then again, everything about the game is ridiculous, including the name. What do the lab and up parts even refer to? In this game, you play as what I think is meant to be a knight. You'll wander through a maze-like level killing golden knights and hoping you don't die because there's nothing that indicates your health. Complete all 4 levels and you'll get an end screen where you just walk off the map completely. Wonderful. This game really has nothing to offer, except for 2021 achievements, which will take longer to pop than it does to beat the game. In 2nd place, Dot, or Zinuru The Great. This was a close one, but in my eyes, Dot just misses 1st place, but only by a hair. This is a game that seemed to have high ambitions and failed to achieve any of them. It seems that it was maybe never intended to be on Steam, or that the devs didn't know how to take it down, as there are no screenshots and it seems like they tried to delete the game. And yet they didn't bother changing the price or making it free. So, why is it so bad? Camera movement and player movement both feel awful, the combat is unwieldy, the AI is non-existent, the animations don't work, there are bugs everywhere, and collectibles do nothing. There's a training area at the start, but no tutorial given. I literally stumbled my way into figuring out how to leave the room. There's only 1 level to explore and it's filled with ways to get out of bounds and break the game almost instantly. You leave the level by walking into a solid wall with nothing to indicate that you should do this. This takes you to a final area, at which point you walk forward a few steps and finish the game. And then the game has the stones to ask if you want to replay it. Replay it? Why? To find more bugs? In all fairness, this was hilarious to play on stream and discover its brokenness with everyone, but there are absolutely 0 reasons to play, let alone buy this game. I have a hunch that it's actually a student project that found its way onto Steam and has long since been abandoned. If that's the case, I do hope that the devs are doing well and are making better games than this. And lastly, in 1st place, Medieval Real Estate. Taking home the worst game I've played in 2023 award is Medieval Real Estate, or if you like, everything ever made by Eco Games. This game was originally one of 3 reviewed in a single video, and each was an awful, poorly made, boring game. But this one takes the cake. Click on houses when the price is low to buy them, and then click on them again when the price is high to sell them. repeat forever because there is no win condition for this game. There's also no lose condition, it just gets to the point where your money goes negative and then you can't play anymore. It's probably for the best. On an interesting note, the titles by Eco Games are no longer in their original positions in the Steam store, as the devs changed their names and removed the quotation marks from them. They're still listed on Steam, but on an even more interesting note, they no longer have a dev or publisher associated with them, and no, I have no idea how this works. Where does the money go if you buy it? After a bit of digging, I found they've rebranded to Little Kingdoms Team, with a new game coming out at some point in the future. Hopefully, they've figured out how to make a good game by the time it eventually releases, but somehow I doubt it. So, with that out of the way, let's move on to the top 5 hidden gems that were uncovered this year. Keep in mind that these games aren't perfect, they're just the best I stumbled upon, flaws and all. So, starting with 5th place, .hack Last Recode. Despite being a fan of JRPGs, I'd somehow never heard of this franchise before. It flew completely under my radar. Having now played through the game, I can see why it has a fan base, but also why it never quite reached the heights of other well-known JRPG franchises. It's a very story-focused game, more of an interactive anime broken up by admittedly repetitive combat sections. However, it was the plot and the characters that pulled me through to the end. Taking over 60 hours to complete, .hack Last Recode is actually a remaster of the original trilogy that was released on the PS2, plus one brand new chapter that ties up a lot of loose threads. This is the most expensive game reviewed this year, but is often available at a major discount. If you're a JRPG fan, give this one a look. In 4th place, Reflected. A short but sweet puzzle platformer that came out of nowhere and blew me away with its incredibly well designed levels and use of mechanics. You play as a small rice bowl, and your core mechanic is to teleport to the opposite side of the mirror that divides the level. The clever layering of mechanics along with solid movement and a lovely, if repetitive, soundtrack made for an engaging experience from start to finish. In my opinion, the game was also just the right length and threw the best possible curveball in the final level. It's clever, but that means it's also challenging, so be warned if you decide to dive in. In 3rd place, KLAUS. KLAUS. We love K1. This is a difficult one for me to describe. It's a 2D platformer with a narrative that involves you as the player. The story that the game tells, diving into what it means to be human, to have control over your actions, blends wonderfully with the gameplay, level design, art, and soundtrack. It's an incredibly solid game, although it does have some janky movement physics on rare occasions, and the boss fights are a bit of a letdown. However, the core mechanic of controlling 2 characters at once is brilliant, even if it's not unique. KLAUS is simply an incredibly solid game, and I still don't understand why it's been so criminally overlooked on Steam. If you're a platformer fan, make sure to check this one out. In 2nd place, Red Tether. My goodness, Red Tether. This is a game that I still think about going back to and trying again, especially considering that it is continuing to receive free content updates from the solo dev that created the game. You control a small spaceship as part of a guerrilla group that's trying to defend the galaxy. Sadly, your ship isn't built for combat, as it literally has no weapons. It does, however, have tethers that can be used to attach to 2 surfaces and then contract, causing objects to collide into each other. You'll need to use these tethers in creative ways to rip, tear, pull, and swing your way through a series of levels and boss fights. The controls take a bit to get used to, but when you do, you can swing your way through a fleet of enemy ships like Spider-Man in space. The enemy variety, weapon types, and elemental effects keep every encounter feeling fresh and challenging. Some mechanics feel a bit obtuse, like lightning being able to travel through your tethers, but this can be used against the enemy as much as it works against you. Oh, and did I mention that it has roguelike elements? Because it does, so no 2 attempts will be exactly the same. If you enjoy games like FTL but want something more action-based and fast-paced, you'll have a great time here. Now, before I reveal my favourite game played this year, here's a couple of honourable mentions. Life Not Found. for being a wonderfully moving puzzle cross-visual novel style experience with an important mental health message to deliver. As the first game in my series with a thumbs up rating, this was the first spark of hope on my journey that there would be some actual gems amongst all the garbage. Lingo. Featured on the live streams, this game hurt my head in the best way. The core mechanic of needing to enter words to solve puzzles is simple enough, but with the added rules that come into play as a result of the positioning and colour of the block made this a mind-bending game about words that will challenge your grasp of the English language. And the last honourable mention goes to Void Stranger. A retro-styled puzzle game reminiscent of old-school Legend of Zelda games, Void Stranger constantly challenged me with its clever tile-based puzzles and genre-blending fourth wall breaks and narrative. The game itself isn't too hard to beat, but just reaching the end is the beginning. Now, back to the top 5, and coming in first place, my Gem of the Year award goes to Sprout. Although it's arguable that Red Tether is more expansive and more replayable, Sprout is simply an incredibly rewarding experience, and the only complaint I have about the game is that it's too short and I wanted more. A single screen platformer in the style of Celeste Classic, Sprout will have you jumping and dashing away through 5 zones of levels, with each level being a single screen and each zone introducing a new core mechanic. The controls are impeccable and every death feels like it was your own fault. With the addition of optional collectibles, a death counter and a timer, there are also plentiful options for speedrunning this game, adding to the already reasonable replayability. Add on top of this gorgeous pixel sprite graphics and an awesome soundtrack by Fail Positive, and you've got a recipe for success. Sprout stuck with me as the most memorable game of the year, and I'm glad that I was able to stumble upon this wonderful gem of a game. All of these games will be linked in the description, so go and support the devs that truly deserve it. Welcome to the end of the video. A massive thank you to all the channel members on screen for supporting the channel, especially our 2 Knights of the Holy Grail, Freaky Feline and Loveheart Gonzi. If you're curious, there's a list of all the games played so far on the channel linked in the description. And until next time, take care.